Welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. In today's table topic, which is on everybody's table, China. We've got a lot to talk about. We are at war with China, and it is much bigger than you think. And I have some information for you that I think you're going to probably not like. However, I think you're gonna be appreciative of the information, of having the information, I guess I should say. But we need to know what's going on. We need to make sure we are looking at this situation with clear eyes because it's certainly escalating. It's escalating kind of quickly. I did a show in the past on tariffs because I wanted to make sure that my listeners were fully aware of government finance and can participate in this conversation. There's a lot of people who are sitting this one out because they feel like it's a little bit above their head and they're not necessarily an economics person, and neither am I. I actually hate talking about the intricate details of numbers and all that stuff. I'm more of a creative. However, we need to know what's going on. We cannot be a part of the discussion and only have a small portion of information. I'm going to skip sharing current events this week because I really want to jump into this topic, and I want to dedicate majority, if not all of this show, to really talking about what's happening in China and in giving you some information that I have found. So I'm going to break that down. I spent some time doing a lot of research on this because I started listening to a lot of my independent media as far as other, I should say, individuals who are on the ground doing some grassroots work. And I found this topic to be quite interesting. And the reason why is because it's growing legs. I think people are talking about this from several different angles. And that's something that I think is extremely, extremely important. So I found a independent media personality who is spilling all the juicy tea, who's giving us all the information. She is definitely on the ground, and she made a good point. She's from China, and she's an expert in finance. She was stating how there were people who were giving her information and feeding her information from China because they're concerned about feeding it to America, mainstream media. So they were just a little concerned about that, and not just China, but they're just affiliates of our mainstream media that's kind of all around the world. She's someone they felt they can trust, and I'm glad I found her because she gave me a lot of insight. She shared with us some of the strategies that China is probably planning to use, or we may see rolled out while we're watching them fight back on the tariffs that President Trump is putting on them. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to break all that down. And then lastly, I want to close by discussing the fact that we are in a full-blown economic war, which means that we need to prepare. It means that, there may be backlash. Anytime any country goes into war of any sort, we as people need to make sure that we are prepared, that we are doing things now during the quiet period so that when things rev up, should they rev up, we are not thrown or caught off guard. So we're going to talk about all of that on this show. So let's get started. So the other day, I woke up to a plethora of short clips of Americans praising China's response to our tariffs. And what was the response? In true China propaganda fashion, they came and started targeting Americans and targeting us in the worst way. And they did it through exposing how American brands that are made in China are also sold in America for higher rates. Take a listen.
As long as there's a tag saying made in China, the bag can never be luxury. However, in fact, more than 80% of the luxury bags in the world are made in China. But those luxury brands just won't acknowledge that. They take almost finished bags from China factories back to their own factories and just do the repackaging and logo installing, something like that. That way, the bags will appear at their boutiques as made in Italy or made in France. Those sophisticated European countries, which make you feel mysterious, royal, and thus luxury. Now, close your eyes. Let's just do a little, very easy experiment in your head, okay? Imagine that you have an Hermes bag, and suddenly the label on it changed from made in France into made in China, while everything else, like leathers, zippers, and hardware, remain the same. Do you suddenly feel that your bag is not as luxury as before? If you do, that means you have been misled and poisoned by the market campaign of those luxury brands for too long. Welcome to the real world. Now you see, those bags are made in China by our intelligent and diligent Chinese artisans. Let's not be poisoned and misled by the market campaign any longer, and be a real person. Buy a bag from us, from our factory in China. See the real world for yourself.
When I heard this video and I started listening to him, and I found a bunch of other videos that he was doing just because I wanted to make sure that I was really paying attention, some things stood out to me. First of all, that he's really capitalizing on the fact that America, we are consumers. And he's capitalizing on the fact that we probably don't know just how much of a consumer we are. We live in a different type of government, a different type of society than Chinese people. I see that they're really highlighting the fact that Americans are consumers, and only consumers in a lot of ways. And then they're doing it with clothing and material things, which obviously is going to catch the eye of most Americans. And they typically target people who are in the lower to middle class, those who are not necessarily involved in our economic process. Those who are primarily consumers, mainly because of the fact that they just have not gotten to the space where they're now producers. So something else I found interesting is that they were presenting this information as if it's brand new. If you understand capitalism, then you know that there are so many factors that go into play as it relates to pricing and cost. And so most of us already knew that this was happening, which is why I know a lot of women who will travel all the way to Italy to get their leather or get their certain products because they know that it's cheaper there and our dollar goes further there. So that's already something that was a red flag to me, is that I'm like, man, there's a lot of people who did not know that this was happening. Something else is that we have to be careful about the dangers of propaganda, because what China's doing by saying things, which I've heard in other videos where he as well as others would say things along the lines of, oh, America, this is not us, this is your capitalism. I saw another video where a Chinese man was saying something along the lines of, none of our homeless are living on the streets. All of our homeless are housed. And so they're really trying to hit us in these pain points, thinking that will somehow turn the people within against the government. But you have to ask yourself, why? What is their motive? Like, why does it benefit China to turn us against ourselves? So this whole concept of your country is bad and my country is good, yet no one is in China is addressing the sweatshops. So now they want to talk about sweatshops. No one's addressing the Uyghurs. Now they want to talk about persecution. No. Until I see it being addressed in your country, do not come into America trying to tell us what's going on in our country. The fact of the matter is they are under communism. Their people can't even lobby their government while they're advocating for us to lobby our government. So that was something else that stood out to me. There is a cultural perception that China there's a cultural perception that China has as it relates to America. And that's something else that we're going to have to address at some point. So I think what we're seeing here, I do not want people to get caught up in the emotionalism that's coming out of China right now, because clearly they're upset. And I'm going to tell you exactly why they're upset. But before that, you need to know the history of the United States and China. The US and China were allies in trade at one point, and we were both benefiting from economic cooperation. However, there was a rise of concerns that came up. And these concerns were around unfair practices like the intellectual property theft, which China continues to do, is still our intellectual property. However, I'm sure they think that we're doing the same, but we know that they're stealing ours. Currency manipulation that tipped the scales in the favor of China. So that was some of the concerns that particularly Republicans and conservatives raised as it relates to this relationship between the United States and China. So that obviously caused tensions, national security issues that really took the main stage. China's military and assertiveness in the South China Sea and its alliance with adversaries like Russia and North Korea also pose a threat to us. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. That alliance is going to come up again later on. There were human rights concerns as it relates to how they were handling things, the oppressive conditions in China. Ultimately, tensions rose. And now the relationship between us and China is really like a love-hate relationship. We almost have to interact with them due to certain reasons because of the economy and the fact that they are major exports, which is imports into America. So let's talk about this import versus export fight. So first of all, let's explain this. So imports refers to the goods and products that the United States bring in from other countries, okay? So around 2023, about 40% of what Americans buy from other countries came from China or come from China. That includes popular stuff like our smartphones, toys, furniture, all that stuff. Now, on the flip side, you have exports. And exports, these are the goods that the United States sells to other countries. Now, while the United States does export items like airplanes and cars and agricultural products, the total amount sold to China is significantly lower than what we buy from China. As of right now, the White House has announced that the total tariffs imposed on China could reach 145%. That's huge. That includes the tariffs that President Trump has put on them, as well as those from previous administrations. Trump has increased tariffs on lower value items worth $800 or less to 120%, up from 90%. So as a response, China is also trying to slap tariffs back on us. And so everyone's going back and forth, and thus that's why we call it a trade war. Because that's what's happening right now. But I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to look at this from a bigger picture, because this is much, much deeper. It almost feels as though I think people think that we are in a negotiation. And while that is also true, we're not just in a negotiation. We are in an all-out war. As Americans, we're either taking the bait and talking about China, like I'm hearing people say things like China's not our enemy. That's very bizarre. But either way, we're either taking the bait or we are siding with what we would like to side with because it fits a narrative or it helps us push whatever emotion we are feeling towards our own country. But I'm telling you right now, this is not the time to abandon our country. This is not the time to turn your back on America, because I don't know exactly where you're going to go if you turn your back on America. So after the break, we're going to discuss something. So apparently, there's a 7,000-page document floating around that outlines 5 strategies that China could possibly use on America should this war continue to grow. And I have those 5 strategies. I'm going to share it after the break. You're listening to The Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3. Don't leave the table. Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. This is the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3, where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And if you're joining us for the first time, don't worry. You can catch an encore episode tomorrow at 9 a.m. right here on Extra 106.3. And remember, our podcast drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. And if you're feeling eager, you can watch the video podcast right now on YouTube. Just remember to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, and your likes, comments, and shares are always welcomed. Now grab a seat and let's get back to the table. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. Speaking of republic, today's table topic is about how our republic is at war with communists, the communist people of China. But there are people who are really eating this up. And I think that they think that we're just in this like grand negotiation. And I do believe that to a certain degree, but not quite. It's a little bit more than that. But in order for us to really fully understand what's really going on, we need to understand the economic landscape of China. Because I think that there are people that think that China is such a huge superpower economically. And I say that because I'm hearing people who are on the left in the media who are saying things like America's just mad that China is now somehow taking over or doing better than us. And I'm just very confused because we have two completely different governments. They are under communism and we are under a republic. Two totally different things. We believe in capitalism. They believe in capitalism for only a few people. But anyway, that being said, I really want to go into what's happening right now because China's economic position is not as strong as you think. I saw something that said that around 34% of Chinese exports come to America. And that they obtained a surplus over the last few years due to all the exports that came to America. So the fact that they're kind of walking around acting like they don't need us anymore, I'm gonna call bluff on that. I think that's just them trying to engage us into their strategies. So what are these strategies? There was a independent media source that I found. I'm gonna drop the link to the full explanation in my description box because she takes questions and she's answering a lot of questions that you may have. So I want to make sure I put that there. But she discussed this 7-page document that somehow got into the hands of these independent media sources through a professor who was handed some of the details of the document based on memorization. I was thinking, oh, okay, well, this is like third party. But wait, when I listened to the 5 strategies, I could not avoid the fact that I believe that I'm witnessing it. Like I see this happening. And not only that, but I also can see this becoming a thing. She said the tariff war is not an isolated economic dispute, but the first battle in a total war launched by Trump encompassing politics, economies, military force, and ideology. The leadership sees the tariff war as an opportunity to break the United States' global dominance and calls on the entire party, the entire military, and the nation to follow Xi Jinping's directives. So clearly, China is seeing this as more than just a bunch of negotiation of numbers and products and services. Okay? So for those who are saying they're not our enemy, just stay tuned. So strategy number one is to address what's happening through decisive struggle. Basically what it's saying is this is already happening. It's all about destabilizing our patriotism. It's about China influencing Americans, but we can't post on their sites to influence the Chinese. It's about them creating this internal divisiveness in order to capitalize on the struggle of our people. So we're already seeing that, right? So that grabbed my attention because we're already seeing them doing that through these videos. So I had to move on and listen to the rest of the strategies. So let's get into the second strategy. There are two major financial war plans, according to this document. The first is Chinese political elites and foreign assets. So the government wants to keep track of foreign bank deposits held by party officials and executives working for the state-owned enterprises, especially those exceeding $200,000 in funds. They must be immediately transferred out of the United States and back to China or to a neutral country. And this includes family members of officials as well. So, what does that mean? Basically, the first strategy will be to instruct all of their government officials or party officials and executives who may have money in our banking system to transfer it out of the United States and move it somewhere else. Okay? The second plan involves full financial decoupling readiness. Officials are asked to be thoroughly prepared on a short notice to pull $1 trillion in United States Treasury bonds and to sell $2 trillion in United States corporate equity and debt securities in the shortest amount of time possible. The goal here is to try to destabilize our financial market. So once again, these are instructions that are not sent to us. So basically, China's like, you better listen. And here's the thing, China holds a lot of our debt. But I always feared that there was going to be a time where China will utilize these type of tactics. Let's move on to strategy number 3. The third strategy is to prepare their people for prolonged economic war. How are they going to do that? It requires officials to strengthen China's ability to be economically self-reliant and enhance a domestic market circulation system. Chinese officials at all levels must prepare for severe hardship and be ready to partially or fully restore government rationing systems. These are the systems where they allocate, grains, vegetables, your food to you. We have not lived under this if you're in my generation, but there are those who have lived through some of this. Obviously, during World War II, there was a rationing system. And then there was a time, I believe, during the economic downturn under Jimmy Carter where there were rules. And we're also seeing a little bit of this now. I mean, I went to my local grocery store and I was told I only can get 2 cartons of eggs. I mean, that's rationing. So now you have China instructing their leaders to do this. This is because China is heavily dependent on our consumption. So that's why they're not telling you to stop buying from these brands. They're telling you to buy direct from them. Why? Because now you're not supporting those businesses that are local or American businesses who may be getting manufacturing in China, but now they want you to just put all your money into China. Come support us. Come support us. We need it. We need it. We need it. They're trying to keep your consumption without having to follow our rules. China's economic stability is significantly reliant on its trade relationship with us. Approximately 18% of China's total exports are directed to the United States, making it one of China's largest export markets for crucial economic health. Over the last 3 years, I think we saw a rise from that 18% to about 34%. But on average, it's about 18%. In 2021, around 66% of U.S. imports of consumer electronics came from China. The United States is a significant source of foreign direct investment in China, with approximately $123 billion invested in 2020. As you can see, there's a lot of interest. This is major. We're at a brink of destabilizing one of our economies. This is a full-on war. And you cannot forget that China is known for their propaganda machine. It's not like they can go over there and just be creative and be amazing and participate in the system that will allow them to keep growing and growing and growing. Nope, 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 nope. In order for them to guarantee housing for every single person in the country, that means the government is regulating everything else as well. The fourth strategy: instruct the National Liaison Department and the Foreign Ministry to deepen strategic partnerships with Russia, Iran, North Korea, forming a political foundation to counter America. Now, remind you, I already touched on this, where we've already are starting to see China meet with President Putin. We've seen him having conversation with Iran. I believe there was some support that he provided them. And we already know that he's in conversation with North Korea. So these strategies, while it comes off like they're secretive, you really can see these things happening. The goal is to push the United States into economic isolation and losing its status as what they call the global police, and to bring down our 80-year American dominance that began after World War II. Their words, not mine. So for those who say China is not our enemy, then why are they meeting with all of our enemies? China wants to take down America, just like what happened in the Soviet Union with Nikita, who said, I want to take down this country without firing a single shot. That is where China is. And Ping, just like Putin, are fighting for dominance. So while I believe that this is a economic war right now, the fifth strategy tells me that it doesn't have to stay there. And they're willing to allow this to go as far as it needs to go. So let's talk about this fifth strategy. Since they said they're willing to fight to the end, let's see what they consider to be the end. If the economic war intensifies, a military confrontation becomes inevitable. That's what this strategy is. The fifth strategy is preparing for military confrontation. The CCP must seize the initiative and choose the battlefield and are prepared for a military showdown with the United States, starting with the invasion of Taiwan. This is called a new type of conventional war fought under a full spectrum of information warfare backed by a credible nuclear deterrent. Wonder what that means. And if the United States intervenes and starts to support Taiwan, then the plan is to destroy the United States military bases in Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Guam, thus forcing the United States to retreat east of Hawaii, effectively reducing the U.S. as a regional power rather than a Pacific. China's ready to go to war. They are willing to take this to the ground, the battlefield. Are you? I mean, that's a big question. Where are we on this? Because being anti-war doesn't mean war won't happen, because it could come to our door. And Taiwan is an ally of America. And if war breaks out over there, then more than likely, yes, we're going to send some troops over there to try to help them. But that's what China wants. They want us to fight them on their geography. I mean, look at what happened during Vietnam. When you hear stories of people who fought in the Vietnam War, they'll tell you these people were carving out trees and hiding in them. I heard of pits that were carved in the ground that had all kinds of spikes and stuff. Beyond being afraid of having to go hand-to-hand combat, fighting on their territory is always uncomfortable. It's always not good. Obviously, we don't want them to come and fight on our territory, but they also know that over here we have guns, which is something that's not allowed. And when you look at these strategies, the fact that it looks like we're already seeing strategy 1 and 2 being implemented, 3 on the verge, I think we need to pay attention. This is much, much bigger. Much bigger. And I'm encouraging you to look at this as bigger than just tariffs. This is about global dominance. This is about national security. This is about potentially going to war with China. So, the next segment after the break, I am going to share some practical tips just so I can help prepare you for what we may be facing. Because I'm telling you, it is a quite interesting space that we're in right now. And if we don't pay attention, what I'm concerned about is I'm concerned that there are people who think that this is something simple, that it's going to blow over, that it's going to be quick. And I'm a little concerned about whether people are prepared in America for a prolonged war. You know, something that Marjorie Taylor Greene said at her town hall this past week is that, we didn't get here overnight. And she's absolutely right. We did not get here in place in this economic position overnight. So if you think it's going to recover or we're going to somehow come out of it overnight, you're sadly mistaken. There may be a dip in this economy that is necessary so that when we rise again, we are actually going to rise again. So don't leave the table. You're listening to The Janelle King Show. This is Extra 106.3. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. This is the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3, where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And if you're joining us for the first time, don't worry. You can catch an encore episode tomorrow at 9 a.m. right here on Extra 106.3. And remember, our podcast drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. And if you're feeling eager, you can watch the video podcast right now on YouTube. Just remember to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, and your likes, comments, and shares are always welcomed. Now grab a seat and let's get back to the table. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic, China. This war is bigger than you think. China wants to take our place. It's like they're extremely jealous of us. Regardless of how we got here, regardless of what you think about America, everyone wants to be us. They want to see America fall, or at least weaken us enough where they think that they can kind of come in and now overtake us. And what Trump's tariffs are doing is it's positioning us for a detachment from any type of reliance on another country, and is trying to place us in a position of self-sustaining. And the reason being is because as I outlined those 5 strategies, the 5th strategy is to take this war to the battlefield. China is not afraid to go to war for real with us, and they want to do it through Taiwan. When you see China's already lined up around Taiwan, that means they're at the position where Putin was prior to invading into Ukraine. They are at the same position that Putin was prior to invading Ukraine. So when you have them kind of just waiting, hoping that we will jump in the fight, which then will put them at war with us, we better make sure that we are self-sustaining and that we're able to survive over here, because during World War II, people were having to create their own personal gardens. It was rough. Go look up what people had to do while World War II was happening in order to maintain and survive while the war was going on. We have to start manufacturing more in America. We cannot be a country that relies so heavily on other countries. What can you do today to just start preparing for this? Because the fact that we're in an economic war, I'm going to give you some economic practical tips. Number one, create a budget. Track all of your income, all of your expenses, identify areas where you can cut back. Use budgeting apps, use spreadsheets, use monitoring apps, whatever you need to help monitor your spending, to help ensure that you are aware of how much it's going to take for you to be able to take care of yourself should we see a major dip. When it comes to utility costs, reduce them by being energy efficient. Switch to energy efficient appliances, LED light bulbs, unplug electronics when you're not using them. Lower that cost. Some people have smart thermostats where they can program it so that it's at an optimized heating and cooling level, and it's also not running up your bill. Fix leaks. If you have water issues and you want to do some water conservation, fix any leaks that you may have. Install low flow shower heads. Run dishwashers and washing machines only with full loads or not at all. When it comes to groceries, do meal planning so that you can avoid impulse shopping while you're in the grocery store. Create a list when you go into the store so you're not just walking up and down the aisles and grabbing things. Cut coupons. Look for cash back apps. Promotions. I love Costco. They always send out a little book and we go through it every time it comes out looking for coupons. Subscription services like Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff. Evaluate and know how many subscription services you have. Cancel those that you're not using so that you can save money. Shop around for your insurances such as auto, home, health. Governor Kemp just passed tort reform here in Georgia. Let's see what that does and see if that helps us when it comes to our rates. Transportation, carpool, bike, walk. Don't burn up your gas if you can help it. Regular maintenance on your car to make sure that you have fuel efficiency is another tip. Avoid those costly repairs that may come at the end because you're not regularly servicing your car or making sure that it's ready and it's operating an optimum efficiency. Lower your cost of entertainment. Do things outdoors. I found out that my Pilates club is going to participate in these free classes that's happening at our square, and it's at 6 p.m. It's free. I mean, therefore, you can still go work out. Look for opportunities to do things for free. Look for activities that are fun and outdoor. Cook meals at home instead of going out to eat. And I know restaurant owners are like, no, don't do that. And I get it. But if you do have to go to a restaurant, I do encourage you to support the local restaurants around your neighborhood. Negotiate your bills. See if you can get any type of discounts. Contact your service providers for your internet and cable and see if you can get better rates. Look for automatic savings. And last but not least, create a small financial cushion if you can. If you can only save $1 out of every paycheck, do so. Because we are in an economic war right now, but if it escalates, because we have two presidents that are both willing to literally fight to the end. Make sure that you are prepared. It's not the government's responsibility to make sure that we are so taken care of that we can't take care of ourselves. We have to still take care of ourselves. Until next week, stay unafraid, stay unapologetic, and never stop seeking the truth.